Welcome back, everybody. As you can tell, today we're going to be taking a look at Robin and then Aria, and I want to give some of my thoughts and break down the characters in full. Without further ado, though, let's get into it. The first character we're introduced to is Robin, or whoever you saw. In short, this character looks really ridiculous. She was, of course, slated or going to look like more of a DPS based on her animations, and true to her name, she is absolutely that, a DPS. That said, in terms of her kit and her design, they both look extremely cool, but let's actually break down what she does. Now, to start, first and foremost, she has effectiveness as a team-wide imprint, which is sometimes useful. But in addition to this, she's 115 base speed with decently high attack and effectiveness. Now, moving from this, in terms of her self-imprint, she does also provide herself attack percent, which is really cool, and we'll need that, as you'll see in a moment when we talk about her kit. Now, her first ability is Say Hello to My Little Friends, which is funny, which kind of makes sense, but in terms of what it actually does, it's an AoE attack, which extends the duration of debuffs, except for those which would prevent movement, which basically says that you can't use this on things like restrict or stuns and sleeps, etc. With a 100% chance to inflict defense break for 2 turns. Now, in addition to this, this reads that when the skill is not on a cooldown, or when not on cooldown, at the start of an ally's extra turn, it gives her swift attack and also increases the combat readiness by 25%. Now, you might be curious about that little bit of wording at the end here, or exactly what this means, but as you'll see in a moment, this character is very based on burns, and because of that, as you see from the skill, when it says that when the skill is not on cooldown at the start of an ally's extra turn, yada yada yada, this is essentially to insinuate that she is going to do something before this turn in order to strip and debuff the enemy so that she can, with her soul burn, detonate bleed and burn effects inflicted on the target. Now, this is a little bit confusing again, but as you'll see through the showcase, this means that she does pair well with characters, in this case, maybe like a character like Ran, or even a character like Renak. And again, as you'll see in a moment, she looks pretty ridiculous. Now, because of this swift and the increased combat readiness push, she gains a load of combat readiness push in general. But as we go to her S2, or well, I guess I will let you see the animation real quick because it does look pretty cool. But as you'll see from the setup of the character, when we have the soul burn here, it does an insane amount of damage, assuming that you soul burn it and you burn the enemy target. Now, again, that is a whole team popping, but do remember that, of course, if you do not have the soul burn effect, you cannot detonate the burn and bleed effects. Now, as we move to her S2 is Clear the Back. And with this is a team-wide dispel of 2 buffs with a 100% chance to inflict 3 burn effects for 1 turn. Now, notably here, this is not an Ignore Soul Burn ER or Ignore Soul Burn effect. And instead, this is just a 100% chance, and based on your effectiveness, a chance for you to inflict 3 burn effects, which again is pretty impactful. Now, notably here as well, there is increases combat readiness of the caster by 50%, which when you pair with the S3, obviously granting you the combat readiness push through the swift attack and the increased combat readiness push here, this means that she does basically debuff the enemy team or strip the entire team, applies burns through her S2, then detonates with her S3, which you'll see here in a moment. Now, with this S2, again, it is a bit scarier, and you will likely need things like effectiveness, as this does basically show the entire team burnt. But if you don't have effectiveness in this case to debuff said team, this can be very scary, as there is no soul burn from someone like Briar or Ran to save you here. Now, next, her S1 is a simple attack with a chance for you to inflict bleed for 2 turns. This is kind of whatever, though, because honestly, whatever, it does a little bit of damage and applies bleed, not that significant. Now, in terms of the artifact, her artifact is pretty cool, as it does provide her with not only effectiveness, 30% to be specific, but after attacking, it also allows her the 100% chance to inflict burn on the target for 1 turn. Now, this does have a cooldown of 2 turns, and there are other artifacts in the game, if I'm not mistaken, that also provide you the ability to burn or give you effectiveness. But I think both on the same artifact in the way that I think Robin will want it, does feel like something that may incentivize you to pull for this artifact. Although I'm kind of blanking. I think there's one that Bihu uses in addition to Bihu's own specific artifact that will allow you to burn and is also a ranger artifact. But we'll get to that potentially in a video or a build guide and in a post review afterwards. Now, in terms of the actual combat review though, as you're seeing here, the first thing that they have is Renak here. She takes the extra turn and Robin immediately combat readiness pushes up, which means she doesn't need to be too fast. But in addition to this, after using the S3 here, she of course takes the turn. She's able to use her S2, and with, you know, obviously the with enough effectiveness here, you debuff the entire enemy team, and as you'll see in a moment, just the S3 here alone, completely unedited, just does enough damage and lags your screen actually, even in a showcase, because of how many burns and how much damage is going off all at the same time. Again, this is what you just saw. There is a full team of, if I'm not mistaken, roughly 20 or 16 to 20,000 damage dealt, and of course the tankier characters take a little bit less damage, but this is against a team that of course was defense broken, but also against a team that had Ilnav on it, which reduces the effectiveness of penetrating effects in general. Now, I shouldn't have to explain to you why this is crazy, but dealing 40,000 damage when you have a character that's designed to counter penetration is ridiculous. Now, just that alone, I think, is pretty crazy. But then we were introduced to another character in Aria. Now, Aria, I think, is also pretty cool. And I will also say that this character seems a little bit crazier, if not honestly a bit more explosive than Robin, which is insane, all things considered. Now, the thing is, though, this ML Aria character is going to look a little bit ridiculous because of what her kit entails and how she plays, but I know a lot of you guys are probably really big fans of her design, and I am too. Now, in terms of stat line, she has 102 base speed. She's got a decent amount of, I guess, HP and defense, but as you'll see here in a moment, she kind of does it all. Now, in terms of her first ability that we need to talk about, it's her S2. That first line, however, is extremely scary. Just that base, what it reads is that it increases soul burn consumption of the enemy by 100%. And while this isn't necessarily as insane as removing souls entirely, it does definitely punish people that stack souls in general, and is one of the more recent additions to the game, or one of the more recent additions to the game that actually deal with or affect souls in general. The last character, if I'm not mistaken, that deals with this so directly and negatively is Bellion, with there also being some artifacts or some effects of other characters, I think, that also do this, but to the same effect on a Moonlight character, the last character was Bellion. Now, in addition to this, it also reads that at the start of first battle, it increases the effect resistance proportional to max HP, and when not inflicted by a debuff, it increases the effectiveness of, or the effect resistance of, all allies by 25%. Now, this by itself already makes you think that, wow, you're going to stack a lot of HP and you'll have a crap ton of effect resistance. And truth be told, you'd be right. And this by itself is a very interesting concept for a character, but I could definitely see how people could see this as a bit scary to deal with, as it essentially insinuates that depending on what the rest of her kit does, you can just stack all HP, don't care about anything else, and maybe she's a tankier, more you have to hit me character like General Purgus. But in some cases, you could argue that, well, a tank with a lot of effect resistance and just this passive, who cares, right? It's just a tank, right? However, then we're introduced to her S3, which is honestly, this is a little bit ridiculous sounding. From what we're reading right now, it says that it attacks the enemy with a merciless iron fist, granting a barrier to all allies for 2 turns before increasing defense penetration of the skill by 35%. Now, the fact that this can stack 2 times does make this feel a bit more balanced, as it does essentially insinuate that, well, you can basically, or you can maybe defeat her or lock her up or stun her beforehand, even though she has an insane amount of effect resistance to begin with. But maybe she doesn't do that much. Maybe this damage isn't that impactful until you read this last line here that says, and I apologize, I will remove this from my footage or from my camera. A successful attack always results in a critical hit, and damage dealt and barrier strength increase proportional to the caster's max HP. Now, that obviously means that, well, not only is she dealing more damage with her S3 with this ability, but she's also granting a bigger barrier at the same time. On top of all of this, she also gains effect resistance based on her max HP, and through all of this, you can obviously kind of tell how ridiculous all this stacking HP is. Right. Wrong, actually, because as we move to the next ability with her S1, this also reads that when she uses her S1, she increases her own combat readiness push by 15%, and when her S3 is on cooldown, it allows her to activate disciplinary action as an extra attack. Now, while the base version of this S1 is just a deals damage equivalent or proportional to the caster's max HP based skill, the disciplinary action allows you to, after your S3 is on cooldown, start inflicting injury on enemies, with this ability also resulting in a guaranteed crit, again scaling with a max HP. Now, if you were curious just about how much damage both of these abilities do, maybe you're thinking to yourself that this is something like Arunca's damage or something like Alencia's S3 AoE damage. Just take a look for a moment, just humor me to see just how much damage this does, okay? Soulburn, Luna. Now, at this point of the video, you might be thinking to yourself, 23,000 damage. Well, okay, he's probably like 20k HP, 15k HP, whatever, right? This is a warrior after all. That says 28,000 HP. A character that has 28,000 HP, has no element weakness, and is unconditional. Regardless if this is her second S3, I do believe this is her second S3, but with this S3 and a soul burn, one shot a Luna from full. Well, could one shot a Luna from full, as most Lunas are roughly in that 20 to like maybe 22,000. If you're crazy in 25, well, you survived. However, you almost got one shot by a full tank character with effect resistance, by the way. I also want to make the clear distinction that as you're seeing in the showcase, this is not as though we buffed up Aria and we gave her some sort of insane HP bonus. We didn't even give her young Senya and her artifact. This is literally a team with Death Dealer Ray, Destina, and Crimson Armin with this Aria character just one-shotting someone on the enemy team. Now, if that looked crazy by itself, wait till you see her S1 damage where, well, this is kind of a bad representation. As you'll see here in a moment though, with her S1 against the... Sorry, where is this? Okay, with this S1... Ooh, apologies. I got my timestamp mixed up a little bit, I think. Okay, so... Okay, finally, let's get a hit. All right. Now, as you'll see here in a moment from Aria, when you see this S1 hit, now like this 1400 is kind of whatever, but take a look at how much damage this deals. That is a counter 8,400 damage, right? That inflicts injury. I have to remind you that, again, this character does not need crit rate, does not need effect resistance, but is still technically in the sort of position where she can receive buffs. She, in theory, should have a really tough time being debuffed, as you could probably imagine, but doesn't share the same weaknesses as someone like Bystander Hua Young, where although she can't be debuffed, well, she can't also be buffed too. Instead, this character just, in most cases, can't get debuffed, has an insane amount of HP, 28,000 in fact, and this is usually of most showcases, or during most showcases, the characters are way dumbed down in terms of effectiveness or in terms of how good their stats are. And this character can really solo DPS a team that has Luna, Emma Lua, and Flan. This looks pretty ridiculous and pretty crazy. To be completely honest though, I'm not honestly surprised that the new, or that the ML Aria specific release is, well, amazing or astounding. Now, depending on how you see this character, she may be someone that you love or that you hate. But I do just want to mention that in terms of, or even if I refresh this page, in terms of the initial reception to this character, there are plenty of people that are saying, well, there's a new narrator and people love the thumbnail. Well, regardless of this, like the little mistake, people were saying that they bounce, the jiggles and all this stuff. The thumbnail is fire. It's big. But this specifically, again, the ER. Oh, I apologize. I might not have fully read that. If it's not 25, but rather 40% ER, it is pretty crazy. But now, again, as they're stating here, if you stack this together, a total of almost 100 effect resistance is pretty wild, especially considering that, again, this character prevents cleave just at base, or I shouldn't say prevents cleave, but halves the effectiveness of cleave, especially if you're a soul burn based cleave team, and also, again, has pretty ridiculous stats. Now, again, as a reminder, only HP based, can give effect resistance to the team, doesn't need to crit, or doesn't need crit rate, I should say, and just has so much in her kit already that makes her look ridiculous. And again, in terms of what artifact you can use on her, she's a warrior. If you want to use Sepulchrum, if you want to use some sort of Proof of Valor artifact on her, if you want to use anything in the game, it looks like it'll work with her. But ultimately, I think this character looks crazy. Again, I think nowadays, one of the weaknesses for most bruiser or slow characters is that they don't have a way to deal with cleavers. She's got that. She also looks pretty good in standard, as again, she has, well, a really strong S3. She can injure with her S1, which again lets her deal with some of the more tanky team compositions. But then again, her dealing and providing buffs or a barrier, in addition to having a scaling stronger penetration hit, ridiculous. I think it's fantastic, though, obviously, that she looks so good. I do like her animations in general, but whether or not this is going to be a concerning character, that's up for you guys to discern. That's just my initial take, though, on this character. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys learned something. If you did, make sure to check out the rest of my content and the rest of my videos. I have something special for you epicseven frogs, though, coming soon. Stay tuned for that. But as always, guys, that's going to be it for today's video. Thanks again for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy. Good night.